The night was supposed to be calm. Emily Carter, 7 months pregnant, was resting in her bedroom, cradling the curve of her belly while scrolling through her phone. The baby had kicked earlier, a gentle reminder of the fragile life growing inside her. She thought her world was safe, built on the foundation of love she had poured into her marriage with Adrian Carter. The powerful CEO everyone admired. But that illusion shattered in seconds. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. With trembling hands, Emily opened it. Her heart nearly stopped. Staring back at her was a photo of Adrian, her husband, his arm wrapped tightly around a young model in a revealing red dress. They weren't just together. They were laughing, kissing, drinking champagne in a hotel suite that Emily recognized instantly. It was the very same hotel where Adrian had promised to book them a romantic night once the baby arrived. Her world spun. 1,000 questions raced through her mind. How long had this been going on? Was this the reason for the late nights, the sudden business trips, the cologne that lingered on his suits when he came home at dawn? She could almost hear his lies echoing in the room. "I'm doing this for us, for the baby." Emily felt her throat tighten. Betrayal hit her deeper than any physical wound. She wanted to scream, to smash the phone against the wall. But then, as tears burned her eyes, something inside her shifted. She looked down at her swollen belly, placed her hand firmly over it, and whispered, "I'll protect you. He will never win." That night, Emily made a choice. She wouldn't confront Adrian immediately. She wouldn't beg, nor would she collapse into despair. She would wait. She would gather strength, piece by piece, until the perfect day arrived. The day when his lies, his arrogance, and his affair would come crashing down in front of everyone who once admired him. The betrayal had begun in secret, but the revenge would be written in fire. Emily Carter was not the kind of woman people noticed in a crowded room, but those who truly knew her understood she carried a quiet strength. At 29, she was an interior architect, admired for her ability to transform cold spaces into warm sanctuaries. Clients praised her vision, her patience, and her humility. Yet behind her calm smile, Emily had always carried a sense of fragility, a softness shaped by a childhood of modest means. She grew up in a small suburban home with parents who worked long hours just to keep the lights on. Emily learned early the value of sacrifice. Her father drove a cab until his back gave out. Her mother worked nights at a diner, saving every spare dollar for Emily's education. When she graduated from design school, Emily promised herself she would live a life built on love, not money. That promise is what drew her to Adrian Carter. Adrian was everything Emily was not: confident, magnetic, commanding attention wherever he went. He was 6 years older, already carving his name into New York's skyline as a young real estate CEO. To Emily, he was a dream. A man who saw her not just as the quiet girl from the suburbs, but as someone worthy of standing at his side. When he proposed in Paris beneath the glittering Eiffel Tower lights, Emily believed in fairy tales again. For a while, marriage felt like heaven. They moved into a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a symbol of Adrian's success. Emily left her growing career to focus on building their home, believing she was stepping into a shared dream. Adrian told her, "You don't need to work, I'll provide. You just focus on us, and someday our family." Those words sounded romantic then. Now they cut like a knife. Pregnancy had only deepened Emily's devotion. She endured morning sickness, swollen feet, and long sleepless nights alone in their oversized bed, while Adrian was at meetings. She told herself it was worth it. She decorated the nursery with her own hands, painting stars on the ceiling, imagining their baby boy gazing at them. She hummed lullabies into her belly. She dreamed of Adrian holding her in the delivery room, whispering encouragement as their child entered the world. But reality was colder. As her belly grew, Adrian grew distant. His eyes no longer lit up when she entered the room. His kisses were quick, distracted. He stopped talking about the baby and started talking about expansion deals and new opportunities. Emily ignored the warning signs, convincing herself that stress was the culprit. Love, she thought, would heal everything. Now, as betrayal unfolded before her eyes, Emily saw her situation with brutal clarity. She was vulnerable, 7 months pregnant, financially dependent on a husband who no longer cherished her, and isolated in a glass tower built by his ambition. She had no family nearby, no career to fall back on. The woman she once was, strong, independent, creative, felt buried beneath the weight of sacrifice. Yet in her heart, Emily knew she was not weak. The love she carried for her unborn child sparked a fierce determination. She refused to be the woman people pitied, the abandoned wife left to crumble. Her parents hadn't raised her to surrender. She whispered their voices in her head. "Stand tall, Emily. Even in pain, stand tall." That night, staring into the city lights through her bedroom window, Emily wiped her tears. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, yes, but also unbroken. A plan was already forming. Adrian thought she was powerless, but he had no idea who Emily Carter really was. The wife he betrayed was about to become the storm he could never escape. The world Adrian Carter lived in was built of glass, steel, and ruthless ambition. By 35, he had carved out a reputation as one of New York's youngest and most aggressive real estate CEOs. His company's logo was plastered across billboards, magazines, and skyscrapers under construction. To the outside world, he was the golden boy. Sharp suits, million-dollar smile, a man who had everything. But to Emily, that glittering world had begun to feel like a frozen palace. Every gala they attended was a parade of wealth. Crystal chandeliers hung above marble floors polished so perfectly they mirrored the designer heels of women gliding through the room. Waiters carried trays of champagne while a string quartet filled the silence with Mozart. Men in tuxedos spoke in low, calculating tones about mergers and investments, each handshake a silent competition. Adrian thrived in this environment. He moved through crowds like a king, admired and envied, while Emily often stood a step behind, her hand resting on her belly, ignored by most. She remembered the Bright Horizons charity gala just a month earlier. It was supposed to raise money for children's hospitals, but the real purpose was power brokering. Adrian had promised her it would be their night. Instead, he spent the evening introducing investors to Selena Moore, the young model he described as a brand ambassador. Emily had smiled politely, her heart breaking as Adrian leaned in too close to Selena, laughing with a sparkle in his eyes that had once been reserved only for her. Behind closed doors, Adrian's empire was even colder. Their penthouse, worth millions, felt less like a home and more like a showroom. The walls were adorned with abstract art he had purchased at auctions, not pieces that held any meaning. Every piece of furniture was sleek and modern, hand-picked by designers, yet it lacked warmth. Emily would walk across the glossy floors barefoot and feel nothing but emptiness. Even the nursery she had painted with her own hands looked out of place in that icy world. Adrian loved appearances. Every suit was tailored in Milan, every watch custom-made in Switzerland. He spoke in numbers, profits, market shares, valuations. When Emily tried to talk about the baby's first kicks, his responses were distant. "That's nice, babe. Did you see the article in Forbes?" His obsession wasn't just money. It was dominance, the thrill of being admired by those who once doubted him. And with that admiration came temptation. Investors introduced him to models, socialites, influencers, women who sparkled under the spotlight. Adrian bathed in their attention. The man who once held Emily's hand in crowded rooms now barely noticed when she slipped away early, exhausted by pregnancy. To the world, Adrian's life looked perfect. He had the mansion, the penthouse, the cars, and the arm candy. But Emily knew the truth. That life was hollow. Behind the gold-plated facade was a man who was never satisfied, who mistook betrayal for power. As she sat in that cold penthouse one evening, staring at the skyline Adrian worshipped, Emily whispered to her unborn child, "This world looks beautiful, but it's poisoned. He thinks he owns everything. He doesn't know. Soon he'll own nothing." For every glass tower Adrian built, Emily would be the one to shatter it. Adrian Carter had perfected the art of appearing flawless. To the public, he was the dream. Handsome, wealthy, the face of New York's booming real estate scene. Magazine covers praised his sharp business mind. Journalists called him the Golden CEO. Investors worshipped him, while young entrepreneurs studied his every move. But beneath the tailored suits and the rehearsed charm lived a man consumed by arrogance, greed, and an insatiable hunger for control. At home, Emily saw the cracks long before the world did. The man who once whispered promises in her ear now barked orders with the tone of a boss, not a husband. "Why is dinner late?" he would demand, glancing at his watch as if every second of his time was too precious to waste on her. When she tried to talk about the baby, his responses were clipped, impatient. "Emily, I don't have time for this. I'm closing a deal worth millions." Pregnancy made her slower, more tired, and Adrian despised it. Instead of offering comfort, he mocked her swollen feet, her cravings, her exhaustion. "You used to be fun," he sneered one night after a gala. "Now you just sit at home, eating ice cream and looking heavy." The words cut deeper than any knife. Emily bit her lip until it bled, too proud to cry in front of him. Adrian thrived on control. He controlled what Emily wore to public events, insisting she dress in gowns that matched his image of perfection. He controlled their finances, cutting her off from the accounts despite promising her a life of security. "I'll handle the money," he declared. "You just stay pretty and quiet." But his cruelty went beyond words. Adrian believed himself untouchable. He flaunted late-night business dinners without apology. He returned home smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't Emily's. When she confronted him, he laughed. "You're paranoid, Emily. Pregnancy hormones. Get a grip." Gaslighting became his weapon, twisting her pain into weakness, convincing her that she was the problem. And then came Selena Moore, the young model with a face that belonged on magazine covers. Adrian paraded her at events under the excuse of marketing partnerships. He leaned too close when he spoke to her, his eyes glinting with desire, his hand brushing hers for a moment too long. Emily noticed. Everyone noticed. Yet Adrian didn't care. He loved the whispers, the speculation, the attention. To him, Emily was the tired wife. Selena was the trophy. Arrogance blinded him. Adrian believed his empire made him invincible. He thought no one could touch him. Not Emily, not the board of directors, not even the press. He forgot the most important truth. The higher a man builds himself on lies, the harder he falls when the truth is revealed. That night, as Emily stared at the damning photo of Adrian kissing Selena, she realized his arrogance was also his weakness. He believed she was powerless, too fragile to fight back. He didn't know that inside her grew not just a child, but a storm he could never control. Adrian Carter thought he was the king of New York. He was about to learn that kings fall the hardest when their crown is made of glass. Selena Moore was 25 and knew exactly what she wanted. With long legs, flawless skin, and a smile polished by years of modeling, she was used to being noticed. The cameras loved her, and men adored her. But beneath the glamour, Selena carried a hunger, a determination to rise higher, no matter the cost. When she met Adrian Carter, she saw not just a man, but an opportunity. Wealth, status, access to the kind of power she had always craved. Adrian fell for her charm easily. To him, Selena was excitement in human form. She laughed at his jokes, flattered his ego, and whispered promises that made him feel young and unstoppable. Unlike Emily, who reminded him of responsibilities, Selena was an escape, a shiny distraction from reality. Emily's first encounter with Selena was at the Horizon Real Estate Gala, an event Adrian had sworn was strictly business. 7 months pregnant and exhausted, Emily debated staying home, but something inside her urged her to go. She dressed carefully, choosing a flowing navy gown that clung gently to her belly, hoping Adrian would notice her effort. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers. Investors, celebrities, and socialites mingled, sipping champagne. Emily entered by Adrian's side, her hand resting on his arm. But within minutes, she felt him stiffen. His eyes darted across the room and landed on her. Selena. She wore a red silk dress that hugged every curve, her hair cascading in waves, her lips painted the same shade as wine. She stood near the champagne fountain, her laughter echoing above the crowd. When Adrian excused himself, Emily followed his gaze and knew instantly. Her chest tightened. This was the woman. Emily watched in silence as Adrian crossed the room. He didn't act like a husband at a business event. He acted like a man greeting a lover. His hand lingered too long on Selena's back, his smile too wide, his eyes too bright. Selena leaned in, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh in a way Emily hadn't heard in months. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A woman nearby whispered loudly enough for Emily to hear. "That's her, the model. Isn't he married?" Another voice replied, "Pregnant wife at home, I heard. Poor thing." Emily's face burned. She wanted to scream, to march across the room and expose them. But she froze, clutching her belly as her baby kicked hard, as if sensing her turmoil. She blinked back tears, forcing herself to stay calm. She knew if she caused a scene, Adrian would twist it. He would call her hysterical, hormonal. Selena noticed Emily too. Their eyes met across the ballroom. For a split second, Selena's smile faltered. Then she lifted her glass of champagne as if toasting Emily from afar, her smirk daring, almost mocking. Emily's blood turned cold. That night, Emily understood the truth. Selena wasn't just a fling. She was bold, ambitious, and unafraid of being seen. She wanted Adrian, and she wanted the world to know it. And Adrian, blinded by vanity, was giving her exactly what she wanted. But what neither of them realized was that Emily had seen enough. Their arrogance, their carelessness. It would become their undoing. She would not fight with tears. She would fight with patience. Selena thought she had won. Emily promised herself this was only the beginning. The night after the gala, Emily sat alone in the nursery she had painted with her own hands. The stars she had brushed onto the ceiling seemed to shimmer mockingly in the dim light. She traced her swollen belly with trembling fingers, whispering lullabies she no longer had the strength to sing. Adrian was still out. No explanation, no phone call, just silence. Her chest ached with humiliation. The image of Adrian laughing with Selena replayed endlessly in her mind. The smirk Selena gave her across the ballroom was burned into her memory. Emily felt like a ghost inside her own marriage, invisible in the very home she had built. The stress weighed heavily on her. Her back ached, her legs cramped, and the baby kicked harder than usual, as if restless inside her womb. At first, she told herself it was normal pregnancy discomfort, but deep down, she knew her body was crying out, overwhelmed by the storm of emotions she carried in silence. The next morning, Emily visited her doctor for a routine checkup. Dr. Patel, a kind woman with years of experience, studied the monitor carefully as the ultrasound images flickered. Emily held her breath. For a brief moment, the rhythmic thump of her baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady but strained. "Emily," Dr. Patel said gently, her brow furrowed. "The baby is healthy for now, but your stress levels are dangerously high. You need to rest, truly rest. No emotional strain, no arguments, no late nights." Emily nodded, tears filling her eyes. How could she explain that her life was nothing but strain? That her husband, the man meant to protect her, was the very source of her torment? On the drive home, she clutched her stomach protectively. Her thoughts raced between fear and determination. She couldn't afford to collapse. She couldn't let Adrian's betrayal cost her the one thing that truly mattered, her child. That night, Adrian finally came home. His tie was undone, his shirt reeking of perfume that wasn't hers. He didn't even bother to explain. Instead, he scoffed when he saw her worried face. "You look awful, Emily. What did you do all day? Sit here crying again?" His words stabbed her heart. She wanted to shout, to tell him about the doctor's warning, to beg him to care. But she stayed silent, swallowing the pain like she had done 100 times before. Arguing would only bring more stress, and she couldn't risk it, not for herself, not for her baby. Later, as Adrian showered, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, gripping her belly. She whispered softly to the child inside her, "I'll protect you. Even if I have to suffer alone, I'll protect you." But in that same whisper came a vow. She realized she was done waiting for Adrian to change. His arrogance, his cruelty, his infidelity, they had already destroyed their marriage, but they would not destroy her child's future. For the first time in weeks, a spark lit in her eyes. Silent suffering had shaped her, but it would not break her. She would endure every ache, every sleepless night, every cruel word. And when the time was right, Adrian and Selena would pay for every tear she shed. Emily's pain would not end her, it would become her weapon. The invitation arrived in a thick white envelope embossed with gold. It was for the Metropolitan Investors Gala, the crown jewel of New York's high society calendar. Adrian insisted they attend together. "Optics matter," he said coldly, as though Emily were nothing more than an accessory to be polished and paraded. Emily agreed, though dread twisted in her stomach. 7 months pregnant, her body heavy and tired, she wanted nothing more than to curl up at home. But something told her this night would reveal the truth she had long feared. The ballroom glittered with extravagance. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over marble floors, and champagne flowed like water. Powerful men in tuxedos and glamorous women in designer gowns filled the space, whispering deals worth millions. Emily entered beside Adrian, her hand on his arm, trying to look strong. She wore a pale blue gown that highlighted her round belly. A quiet declaration that she was his wife carrying his child. But Adrian had other plans. Within minutes, he excused himself, claiming he needed to greet investors. Emily followed his gaze, and her heart sank. There she was, Selena Moore. Dressed in a daring black gown that shimmered under the lights, Selena stood at the center of a crowd, laughing as though she belonged there. She didn't look like a guest. She looked like the star of the evening. Adrian didn't hesitate. He walked directly to her, placing a hand on the small of her back, whispering something that made her giggle. The crowd noticed. Whispers began, subtle at first, then louder. "Isn't that Adrian Carter's wife over there?" someone muttered. "She's pregnant, and he's shameless." Emily froze. Every eye in the room seemed to dart between her and Selena. Pity etched across their faces. Her cheeks burned as humiliation wrapped around her like chains. She heard the words, sharp as daggers. Poor wife, betrayed, pathetic. She tried to breathe, but the air felt thin. Her hand clutched her belly protectively as her baby kicked, almost in protest of the pain she was swallowing. Then came the final blow. Adrian raised a glass of champagne and toasted with Selena, right in front of the investors. Cameras flashed, capturing the scandal. He didn't even glance at Emily standing across the room. His wife, his pregnant wife, watching her marriage unravel under the unforgiving glow of chandeliers. Emily's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to let them fall in public. She stood tall, shoulders straight, lips pressed into a fragile smile. Inside, she was shattering. One of the investors' wives approached her, lowering her voice. "Sweetheart, go home. You don't deserve this." The words, meant kindly, cut Emily deeper than cruelty could have, because they were true. That night, she slipped away quietly, unnoticed, while Adrian basked in the spotlight with his mistress. Alone in the back of the car, Emily cradled her belly and whispered, "I will not let him break us. He can humiliate me, but he will never humiliate you." The humiliation that nearly crushed her became something else, a seed of fire. Adrian believed the world adored him. Selena believed she had replaced her. They were both wrong. Emily vowed that the next gala would not end in shame. It would end in their downfall. The ride home from the gala was a blur. Emily sat in the back of the black town car, her hands trembling on her lap. Adrian didn't even bother joining her. He had left with Selena, unashamed, like a man flaunting a prize. The driver avoided eye contact in the mirror, but Emily could feel the weight of pity hanging in the silence. She clenched her fists, forcing herself not to cry in front of a stranger. The moment she entered the penthouse, the strength she had clung to shattered. She collapsed onto the couch, her gown wrinkling beneath her. Her sobs echoed through the cold, cavernous space. The paintings on the walls, the marble floors, the glittering view of Central Park, all of it mocked her. This wasn't a home. It was a prison where her heart had been broken 1,000 times. She pressed her hands to her face, tears slipping through her fingers. "Why?" she whispered into the empty room. "Why wasn't I enough?" The baby kicked then, strong and sudden, pulling her back from the abyss. Emily gasped and cradled her belly, whispering, I'm so sorry you feel my pain." But even her apology couldn't silence the flood of despair. That night she barely slept. Her mind replayed every cruel word Adrian had ever thrown at her, every lie, every dismissal. She remembered the promises in Paris when he asked her to marry him, the way he swore she would never be alone. Now, she had never felt lonelier. In the early hours of the morning, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Her eyes were red, her cheeks swollen from crying. She barely recognized herself. The glow of pregnancy was gone, replaced by a hollow reflection. She touched the glass, whispering, "Who are you? Where did you go?" For the first time, a dark thought crossed her mind. Maybe she couldn't survive this. Maybe the weight of betrayal was too heavy. She sank to the cold tile floor, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth as if she were the child, desperate for comfort. Then the words of Dr. Patel returned, haunting her. "Your stress levels are dangerously high. The baby needs you to be calm." The guilt slammed into her chest. She realized this wasn't just about her anymore. If she gave up now, her child would pay the price. Still, that night marked her lowest point. Emily wrote in her journal, her tears staining the pages. "If he wants to destroy me, he already has. I am nothing to him. I am nothing to anyone, but I cannot be nothing to you, my little one. You are all I have left." Her pen slipped from her hand as exhaustion overcame her. She curled up on the couch, clutching a blanket around her body, rocking herself to sleep like a wounded soul. She didn't know it then, but this collapse was not her end. It was the breaking point before the rise. In her deepest despair, she planted the first seed of resilience. Because sometimes a woman has to break completely before she discovers how to rebuild stronger than ever. 3 days after the gala, Emily sat in the cafe down the street from her penthouse, stirring a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her face was pale, her movements slow, her spirit dimmed by the humiliation she had endured. She hadn't planned to meet anyone. She just needed to breathe outside the suffocating walls of Adrian's empire. That was when she heard a familiar voice. "Emily?" She looked up, startled. Standing before her was David Nguyen, an old friend from her university days. He had been one of the few who knew her before Adrian, before the wealth, before the cage of marble and glass. David was older now, 38, with streaks of gray in his hair and a calm confidence that came from years of practicing law. "David," she whispered, forcing a smile. "It's been forever." He sat down across from her, studying her face with quiet concern. "I almost didn't recognize you. You look tired." Emily laughed bitterly. "That's one word for it." David didn't push. He waited, giving her space, and somehow the silence broke her. The words spilled out. The betrayal, the mistress, the humiliation at the gala. She didn't plan on telling him everything, but once she started, she couldn't stop. By the time she finished, tears glistened in her eyes. David leaned forward. "Emily, you don't deserve this. You know that, right? He doesn't get to do this to you." She shook her head. "What choice do I have? I'm 7 months pregnant. I have nothing of my own anymore. Adrian controls everything." That was when David's expression changed. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it across the table. "That's where you're wrong." Emily frowned, hesitating before opening it. Inside were documents, financial records, emails, contracts. Her eyes widened as she read. Adrian had been funneling money through shell companies, inflating profits to impress investors, all while secretly using company funds to maintain Selena's lavish lifestyle. There were hotel receipts, wire transfers, even photographs. Emily's hands trembled. "How do you have this?" David's jaw tightened. "Because I've been watching him. Adrian tried to muscle into one of my clients' real estate deals. I started digging and uncovered far more than I expected. When I heard your name at the gala, when I saw the photos in the papers, I knew I couldn't stay silent." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a flicker of power stir within her. This wasn't just betrayal, it was evidence. Concrete, undeniable proof of Adrian's lies. David placed a hand on hers, steady and reassuring. "Emily, you don't have to fight him alone. I'll help you, but you need to be careful. Men like Adrian, they don't go down without a fight." Emily looked at the folder again, her pulse quickening. The woman who had crumbled on her bathroom floor days ago felt distant now. In her place was someone different, someone ready to rise. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "He thinks I'm powerless. He has no idea what's coming." David smiled faintly as though he heard her. "Good. Hold on to that fire, because this is just the beginning." The betrayal had broken her, but the truth in her hands promised a storm Adrian could never control. For days, Emily carried the manila folder everywhere she went. It felt heavier than any weight she had ever known, not because of the paper, but because of the power it contained. Inside those pages were the lies Adrian had built his empire on. Lies that, once exposed, could bring him crashing down. At first, fear threatened to paralyze her. What if Adrian discovered she had the files? What if he retaliated? She was still 7 months pregnant, still physically vulnerable. But then she remembered the humiliation at the gala, the smirk on Selena's lips, the cruelty in Adrian's eyes. Fear slowly turned into fuel. David was by her side every step of the way. He met her at quiet cafes, away from Adrian's circle, guiding her through strategies. "You need to start thinking like him," David told her. "Anticipate his moves. He underestimates you, Emily. That's your advantage. He doesn't expect you to fight back." One afternoon, David handed her a card with the name of a trusted stylist. "It's time you showed them you're not the broken wife they think you are." Emily hesitated. She had spent months hiding in loose maternity clothes, her hair tied back, her eyes puffy from tears. But something inside her shifted. She booked the appointment. The transformation was subtle yet powerful. Her hair, once dull, now shone in soft waves. A touch of makeup brightened her tired face, revealing the strength in her eyes. The stylist chose elegant dresses that embraced her pregnancy rather than hiding it, silks and satins that made her glow. When she looked in the mirror, Emily hardly recognized herself. She wasn't the timid, betrayed wife anymore. She was a woman reborn. That night, Adrian came home late. For the first time in months, Emily was awake, sitting on the couch in one of her new dresses, her posture tall, her eyes sharp. Adrian froze, surprised. "What's this?" he asked, his voice half mocking. Emily smiled faintly. "Just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I can't look like your wife." He scoffed and walked away, dismissing her. But Emily didn't flinch. His indifference no longer crushed her. It only hardened her resolve. Behind the scenes, she and David began planning. They gathered more evidence, witness testimonies, emails, bank statements. Every document was another weapon. Emily kept her composure at home, acting as though nothing had changed. But every day she grew stronger. Her silence no longer weakness, but strategy. She began journaling again, not with despair, but with determination. Her entries became blueprints for her revenge. "When the time comes, I won't scream. I won't beg. I'll let the truth speak for me." For the first time in weeks, Emily slept peacefully. The nightmares of Adrian and Selena were replaced by visions of justice. She dreamed of walking into a room full of people who once pitied her and watching their faces as the truth shattered Adrian's empire. The woman who had once collapsed on her bathroom floor was gone. In her place stood a mother, a fighter, a strategist. Emily Carter had been broken. Now, she was building herself into the weapon that would end Adrian's reign. Selena Moore believed she had won. After the gala, photos of her on Adrian's arm flooded the society pages. Bloggers called her the new queen of New York's real estate scene. She basked in the attention, sipping champagne in Adrian's penthouse suite at the Ritz, convinced she had replaced Emily permanently. But cracks began to show. One evening, while Adrian showered, Selena wandered through the suite. On the dresser lay his phone, buzzing with messages. Curiosity tugged at her. She picked it up and froze. Adrian hadn't bothered to hide anything. Dozens of texts from other women flashed across the screen. Models, socialites, even an actress. Each message dripped with the same flattery he showered on her. Selena's throat tightened. She scrolled further, finding hotel receipts and late-night plans that didn't include her. For the first time, doubt seeped in. Was she truly special, or just another accessory in Adrian's endless collection? When Adrian emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, Selena forced a smile and set the phone down. "Busy night?" she asked, her voice deceptively light. He smirked, brushing her off. "Business never sleeps, sweetheart." That night, while Adrian snored beside her, Selena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought of Emily, 7 months pregnant, still Adrian's legal wife. Selena had laughed at her weakness, her silence, but now, she wondered if that silence hid something more. Her doubts deepened a week later at another investor dinner. Adrian was in his element, holding court, flashing his perfect smile. Selena sat beside him, radiant in a gold gown. But halfway through the evening, Adrian leaned across her to whisper into another woman's ear. The gesture was intimate, too familiar. The woman laughed, her hand brushing his arm. Selena's stomach churned. She excused herself, locking herself in the restroom, staring at her reflection. For the first time, the glamorous gown felt like a costume, the diamonds around her neck like chains. She had traded her dignity for proximity to power, and Adrian treated her no better than a rented dress. When she returned, she overheard 2 investors murmuring. "He's reckless," one said, "cheating on his pregnant wife so openly, that mistress better watch out. Once he's bored, she'll be next." Their words cut deeper than Adrian's indifference. Selena smiled through the rest of the night, but her confidence was unraveling. Back in her apartment, away from Adrian's world, Selena poured herself a glass of wine and scrolled through the news. That's when she saw a photo of Emily, dressed elegantly, hair shining, eyes fierce. The caption read, "Mrs. Carter steps out in style after gala scandal." Selena's heart skipped. Emily no longer looked broken. She looked powerful. For the first time, Selena felt fear. Not of Adrian, but of the woman she had dismissed. She wondered if Emily knew more than she let on. If she did, then Selena wasn't standing on solid ground. She was perched on a cliff edge, waiting for the earth to crumble beneath her. Selena slammed her laptop shut, her hands shaking. Adrian thought he owned her. She had thought she owned him. But Emily Carter, silent, patient, and underestimated, might own them both. And if that was true, Selena's greatest weakness wasn't Adrian's betrayal. It was underestimating the wife she thought she had already defeated. Adrian Carter had always believed loyalty was a myth. To him, people were tools, useful only as long as they served his ambition. Selena Moore was no exception. She was beautiful, yes, and dazzling on his arm, but she was never the destination, only a stepping stone. Selena learned this truth on a night she would never forget. Adrian had promised her they would attend the Harrington Investment Gala together, an exclusive gathering where billion-dollar deals were whispered between glasses of vintage wine. Selena spent hours preparing, her gown custom-fitted, her makeup flawless. She imagined the photographs, the headlines, Adrian Carter and Selena Moore, the city's new power couple. But when she arrived at the penthouse to meet him, Adrian wasn't alone. Another woman was there, an heiress from Europe, the daughter of a banking tycoon. Selena froze at the door, watching as Adrian charmed her, pouring champagne with that same magnetic smile he once reserved for her. "Adrian?" Selena's voice cracked, disbelief dripping from every syllable. He barely flinched. "Selena, this is Elise. She's important. We'll talk later." Selena's blood boiled. "Talk later? You promised." Adrian cut her off with a glare. "Don't make a scene. Optics matter. You know that." The humiliation seared through her like fire. For weeks she had endured whispers from investors, side glances from socialites, cruel comments online about being the mistress. She told herself it was worth it, that Adrian loved her, that she was different. But now she saw the truth. She was just another ornament in his collection, as disposable as the last. Selena stormed out, tears burning her cheeks. But as anger replaced heartbreak, a dangerous thought took root. Adrian wasn't invincible. If he could discard her so easily, he could discard anyone. And one day, he would pay for it. Meanwhile, Emily heard whispers of Adrian's newest conquest through the same society pages. When she saw the photos, Adrian beside Elise, Selena conspicuously absent, she felt a surge of grim satisfaction. For the first time, Selena tasted the same poison Emily had swallowed for months. Emily didn't pity her, but she understood her. Both women had been used, deceived, humiliated by the same man. And now, whether Selena realized it or not, Adrian had created not one enemy, but two. Days later, Selena showed up at Emily's apartment. She didn't announce herself. She simply appeared, her eyes red, her voice trembling with fury. "He's going to ruin both of us," she confessed. "And I won't let him." Emily studied her carefully. Part of her wanted to slam the door, to remind Selena that she had laughed at her pain, flaunted her affair. But another part, the part that had endured Adrian's cruelty, recognized the shift in Selena's tone. "You thought you were safe with him," Emily said quietly. "So did I. But Adrian only loves himself." Selena's lips pressed into a bitter line. "Then maybe it's time we stop him." The room fell silent, heavy with an unspoken truth. Adrian's betrayal had planted seeds of vengeance in both their hearts. Emily had evidence, Selena had proximity. Together, they could dismantle him from the inside out. Adrian thought betrayal made him powerful. He didn't see it was betrayal that would bring him to his knees. Adrian Carter was not content with humiliating Emily in private. His arrogance demanded spectacle. After weeks of flaunting Selena and now Elise, he decided to make his boldest move yet, a merger announcement that would put him in the spotlight once again. And this time, he would use Emily as part of his theater. The invitation came by courier. Emily opened the thick envelope and read the gold lettering. Carter Real Estate Holdings, Merger Celebration Gala. The event would be televised, with journalists, investors, and politicians in attendance. And printed at the bottom of the invitation was her name, Emily Carter, Guest of Honor. She froze. Guest of honor? Her husband, who hadn't spoken to her properly in weeks, now wanted her paraded in front of cameras? That evening, Adrian finally addressed her directly. He arrived home, sharp in a new suit, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers. "You'll be at the gala," he said flatly. Emily's brows furrowed. "Why? You don't care if I'm there." Adrian smirked, sipping his scotch. Optics, Emily. A pregnant wife on my arm makes me look stable, trustworthy. Investors love the family man image, so you'll smile, nod, and act the part. Understood? Her blood boiled. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. Her dignity meant nothing. She was a prop, a pawn in his endless pursuit of power. But Emily bit back her rage. She remembered David's words, anticipate his moves. If Adrian wanted her in the spotlight, then maybe, just maybe, that spotlight could turn against him. The night of the gala, Emily entered the grand ballroom in a silver gown that shimmered beneath the chandeliers. Her pregnancy was impossible to ignore, and for once she embraced it. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and for a fleeting moment, she looked every bit the elegant wife Adrian wanted her to appear. But then the humiliation came. As Adrian took the stage to announce his merger, he beckoned her forward. "And I couldn't have done it without the unwavering support of my wife, Emily Carter," he declared, his hand gripping her arm tightly as if to anchor her to his narrative. The crowd applauded, cameras snapped. But just as Emily stepped back, Adrian leaned down, his voice low and cruel in her ear. "Smile, darling. Don't ruin this for me." Her lips curved into a polite smile, but her eyes burned with unshed tears. Then, in front of the entire audience, Adrian introduced his special guest, Selena. She emerged in a golden gown, radiant and smug, her arm brushing Adrian's as though she belonged there. The crowd gasped, whispers erupting instantly. The cameras caught everything. Adrian flanked by his pregnant wife and his mistress, shamelessly parading them both. The humiliation was unbearable. Emily's heart pounded, her face flushed. She could hear the whispers. How cruel, poor Emily, does she even know? But she didn't collapse this time. She stood tall, her smile frozen, her silence screaming louder than words. Inside, though, the fire roared. Adrian thought he had crushed her dignity beyond repair. What he didn't know was that every insult, every calculated cruelty was building the stage for his own downfall. As she left the ballroom that night, clutching her belly, Emily whispered to herself, "Enjoy your moment, Adrian. It will be your last." The gala that humiliated her would one day be remembered as the night the empire of Adrian Carter began to crumble. The humiliation of the merger gala burned in Emily's chest like a brand. Adrian had paraded her as nothing more than a stage prop while flaunting his mistress before the world. For days afterward, she could still hear the whispers, see the pitying looks. But beneath the shame, something else had taken root. Resolve. She met David in a quiet cafe, the same one where he had first handed her the folder of evidence. She slid into the booth, her eyes sharper now, her posture straight. David noticed the change instantly. "You're ready," he said simply. Emily nodded. "No more tears, no more silence. It's time to end this." Together, they spread the documents across the table. Adrian's financial crimes were undeniable. Embezzlement, tax evasion, falsified contracts. Each page was a nail for the coffin of his empire. But David reminded her that evidence alone wasn't enough. Timing is everything. If we expose him too early, he'll spin it, bury it. We need the perfect moment, the perfect audience. Emily understood. Adrian had built his reputation on appearances. His downfall needed to be just as public, just as spectacular as the facade he maintained. They began gathering allies quietly. David contacted journalists he trusted, people who had been waiting for a crack in Adrian's polished exterior. Emily, meanwhile, reached out to someone she never imagined she would. Selena. Their meeting was tense. Selena walked into Emily's apartment, arms crossed, eyes wary. "Why am I here?" Emily didn't flinch. "Because he betrayed you too? You know it, and you know he'll do it again." For a long moment, Selena said nothing. But then she set her jaw. "What do you need from me?" It wasn't friendship. It wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. Selena provided details only an insider could know. Hotel bookings, off-the-record meetings, whispered conversations Adrian thought were private. Every piece of information tightened the net. The three of them, Emily, David, and reluctantly Selena, formed an unlikely alliance. In secret meetings, they planned the strike. Adrian's company was preparing another gala, this one to celebrate a major international deal. Investors, board members, journalists, the very people Adrian depended on, would all be there. That was where his mask would shatter. At home, Emily played her part perfectly. She smiled when Adrian demanded it, stayed silent when he dismissed her. She let him believe she was still broken, still compliant. But at night, while he slept beside her smelling of another woman's perfume, she whispered to her unborn child, "Soon, sweetheart, soon, everyone will see him for what he truly is." David worked tirelessly behind the scenes, building legal cases, ensuring the evidence couldn't be buried. Selena, driven by her own bitterness, made sure Adrian's latest betrayals were documented with precision. And Emily transformed. She began to walk differently, dress differently, carry herself with a quiet authority. For the first time in months, she looked in the mirror and saw not a victim, but a warrior. The trap was almost ready. All that remained was patience. Adrian's arrogance would provide the stage, and when the curtain rose, it wouldn't be his triumph the world witnessed, it would be his ruin. Emily Carter was no longer waiting for justice. She was preparing to deliver it herself. The night was quiet, but Emily's heart was restless. Adrian had not come home again. Another late meeting that everyone knew meant another night with one of his mistresses. The penthouse felt colder than ever, its glass walls reflecting a life that had become nothing but betrayal. Emily stood in the nursery, her hands brushing over the crib she had chosen months ago. The soft blue blankets were folded neatly, the painted stars on the ceiling glowing faintly in the dark. She sat down in the rocking chair, her swollen belly pressing against her gown, and closed her eyes. Her baby kicked gently, as if reminding her he was there. She placed her hand over her stomach and whispered, her voice trembling, "You don't deserve this. You don't deserve a father who treats us like we are nothing. But I promise you, my son, you will never feel the humiliation I have felt. You will never grow up thinking betrayal is normal. I will protect you, no matter the cost." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were not the tears of weakness she had shed before. These were tears of determination, tears of a mother who had been pushed to the edge, but refused to fall. She remembered the doctor's warning. Your stress levels are dangerously high. You need peace. But how could there be peace while Adrian continued to poison her life? Emily realized then that her fight wasn't just for herself. It was for the innocent child she carried. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against the crib. "I may not have money, I may not have power, but I have something stronger. I have you. And because of you, I will not stop until justice is ours." The vow settled into her bones like fire. Every cruel word Adrian had ever spoken, every mocking glance from Selena, every whisper of pity from strangers, it all became fuel. She would turn her pain into armor, her humiliation into strength. Emily opened her journal and began to write. She wrote letters to her unborn son, pouring her heart onto the page. "When you are old enough, you will know the truth. Not just about what your father did, but about how your mother refused to bow down. I will show you that strength isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the courage to stand up when the world tries to break you." The pages filled quickly, her handwriting firm, no longer shaky. Each word was a promise. She would not be silenced. She would not be erased. When she finally set the pen down, Emily looked at her reflection in the nursery window. For the first time, she saw not a broken woman, but a mother forged by pain into something unshakable. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if agreeing. Emily smiled through her tears. "We'll do this together, little one. You and me against the world. And when the day comes, when he tries to stand above us, we will be the reason he falls." Her vow was no longer just words, it was destiny. Adrian Carter had created his own downfall the moment he betrayed a mother's love. Selena Moore had always believed she was different. She told herself Adrian's love for her was real, that she wasn't just another fling. She endured the whispers, the cruel comments online, even the humiliation of being paraded beside him while his pregnant wife stood silently in the same room. She thought it was worth it. She thought she was winning. But Adrian Carter never loved anyone. Not truly. Selena discovered the truth one late evening in his office. Adrian had left her there while he attended a private dinner. She grew restless, wandering around the room, her heels clicking against the polished wood. His desk drawer was slightly ajar. Curiosity pulled her forward. Inside was a folder labeled "Confidential," a lease partnership. Selena frowned, pulling it open. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a business deal. It was a personal contract, a plan to funnel company money into a trust tied directly to Elise's family. A Attached were photographs of Adrian and the heiress, smiling together at private dinners. Selena's hands shook as she read Adrian's notes scrawled in the margins. Elise equals long-term asset. Selena equals temporary distraction. The words hit harder than any insult ever could. Temporary distraction. That was all she was. A placeholder until something shinier came along. Her chest tightened. She thought of every sacrifice she had made, every time she swallowed the judgment of strangers, every time she played the role of Adrian's glamorous accessory. She thought of Emily too, the way Adrian mocked her behind closed doors. For the first time, Selena realized she was no better off. She was next in line to be discarded. When Adrian returned, Selena forced herself to stay calm. He entered the office with his usual arrogance, jacket slung over his shoulder, smirking as though he owned the world. "Why are you still here?" he asked carelessly. Selena's voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "I was just looking at some of your files." Adrian's eyes narrowed, but he shrugged. "Then you know how busy I am. That's why I don't have time for drama. Don't disappoint me, Selena. You're fun, but I can replace you in a heartbeat." The words confirmed everything. He didn't even hide it. He didn't care if she knew. That night, Selena left his office with a new fire burning inside her. The heartbreak was sharp, but the rage was sharper. She understood now why Emily's silence had never broken. Because beneath the pain was a strength Adrian could never control. Selena poured herself a glass of wine in her apartment, staring at her reflection. She saw the glamorous model, yes, but beneath the surface, she saw something else. A woman used, humiliated, discarded. And for the first time, she hated not Emily, but Adrian. The next morning she called Emily. Her voice was clipped, urgent. "We need to talk. He's planning to throw me aside just like he threw you. I won't let him. And if you still want to destroy him, I'm in." Emily listened silently, then replied, her voice calm but firm. "Welcome to the other side, Selena." Adrian had built his empire on betrayal. But now, two women he thought powerless were standing together, united by the very cruelty he believed would keep them apart. And with Selena's revelation, Adrian Carter's empire had just gained its deadliest enemies. The date was set, Carter Real Estate Holdings Global Expansion Gala. It would be the biggest event of Adrian's career, the night he planned to announce his international partnership with Elise's powerful banking family. Politicians, investors, media moguls, everyone who mattered in New York and beyond would be there. For Adrian, it was the crowning jewel of his empire. For Emily, it was the battlefield where everything would end. She spent the weeks before the gala preparing like a soldier before war. David arranged the logistics. Journalists primed with evidence, legal teams ready to act, board members quietly warned of the storm about to break. Selena supplied the final details, confirming Adrian's secret dealings, his rendezvous with Elise, even the timing of his planned announcement. Emily's role was more personal. She had to become the woman no one expected to see. She began with her appearance. Gone were the muted gowns and tired eyes. In their place, Emily chose a deep emerald silk dress that draped elegantly over her pregnant belly, a statement of both vulnerability and strength. She was not hiding anymore. She was stepping into the light. A diamond necklace, a gift from Adrian years ago, rested on her collarbone, not as a token of his love, but as a reminder of what she had endured. The night before the gala, Emily stood in the nursery, running her hand over the crib one last time. Her baby kicked gently, and she whispered, "Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, I make sure you're born into a world where lies no longer win." David visited that evening, bringing the final documents. He looked at Emily and paused, admiration softening his usually stern expression. "You're ready," he said. Emily nodded. "For months I thought my silence made me weak, but now I see it was my strength. He never saw me coming." Selena arrived later, her demeanor colder, sharper than before. She handed Emily a flash drive. "This has recordings. His calls with Elise, his comments about me, about you. Play it at the right time and he's finished." Emily studied Selena carefully. "Why help me now?" Selena's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Because I finally realized we were never enemies. We were just different victims of the same man, and I'm done being a victim." The three of them sat together, finalizing every step. Emily knew the risks. Adrian was ruthless. If he realized what was happening before the reveal, he could spin it, bury it, even destroy her reputation further. but the timing was perfect. In his arrogance, Adrian had invited the entire world to witness his triumph. He had built the stage. Emily would deliver the curtain fall. Later that night, alone in her room, Emily stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her hair fell in soft waves, her eyes clear, her posture unyielding. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I take back everything he stole." The city lights glittered outside the window, but Emily no longer felt small beneath them. She felt powerful, like the storm gathering on the horizon. Adrian Carter thought the gala would be his crowning moment. He had no idea it was the night his empire would burn. The ballroom of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel pulsed with anticipation. The Global Expansion Gala was the event of the year, a spectacle designed to crown Adrian Carter as a titan not just of New York, but of the world. Glittering chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Photographers lined the edges, their flashes already hungry. Politicians, investors, celebrities, everyone who mattered, filled the hall. Adrian thrived in the spotlight. He strode onto the stage in his tailored tuxedo, Elise beaming at his side. "Tonight," he began, his voice booming with false humility, "we celebrate not just a company, but a legacy." The crowd applauded. He smiled, soaking in their admiration. Then, with deliberate precision, he gestured toward the back of the room. "And of course, none of this would be possible without my wife, Emily Carter." Gasps echoed as Emily appeared. She walked gracefully, her emerald gown shimmering, her pregnant belly undeniable, her chin high. The cameras snapped furiously. She wasn't the broken woman the world had whispered about. She was radiant, unshakable. Adrian extended his hand, expecting compliance. But instead of taking it, Emily stopped center stage, facing the crowd. Her voice was calm, clear, cutting through the murmur. "You're right, Adrian. None of this would be possible without me, but not in the way you want everyone to believe." The room stilled. Adrian's smile faltered. Emily reached into her clutch and pulled out the folder David had prepared. She lifted her eyes, scanning the audience. For years, Adrian Carter has built his empire on lies. Lies to his investors. Lies to his board. Lies to his own family. Gasps rippled again. Adrian stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Emily, this isn't the time." She cut him off. "No, Adrian, this is you paraded me as your loyal wife while humiliating me with your mistresses. But tonight, everyone will see the truth." She handed the documents to a journalist in the front row. Cameras zoomed in on the damning evidence. Financial fraud, embezzlement, proof of secret accounts tied to Elise's family. Screens behind the stage flickered as David, from the control booth, projected Adrian's own emails and receipts for the entire room to see. The audience erupted in chaos. Investors shouted. Board members whispered furiously. Elise's face drained of color. And then came the final blow. Selena stepped out from the wings, holding a microphone. Her voice trembled but carried strength. "And if the documents aren't enough, here are his words." The speakers filled with Adrian's voice, recordings of him mocking Selena, mocking Emily, bragging about how easy it was to manipulate investors and discard women like broken toys. The crowd turned. The admiration Adrian once commanded twisted into disgust. Adrian lunged toward the microphone, rage in his eyes. "You think this will stop me? I built this city. None of you would be here without me." But no one listened. Security moved in. Board members shook their heads. The journalists captured every second. Emily stood tall, her hand resting on her belly. She didn't shout, she didn't gloat, she simply watched as the man who had tried to destroy her was dismantled by his own arrogance. The gala meant to crown Adrian Carter had become the night his empire collapsed under the weight of truth. The fallout from the gala was immediate and merciless. The headlines the next morning didn't praise Adrian Carter, they crucified him. CEO's empire built on lies, fraud, mistresses, and millions lost. Photographs of Emily, poised and radiant in her emerald gown, were plastered beside images of Adrian, caught mid-rage, his face twisted with panic. Investors withdrew within hours. Stock prices plummeted, wiping out years of supposed growth in a single day. The board of directors convened an emergency session, and by afternoon, Adrian Carter was stripped of his title as CEO. He stormed out of the skyscraper that once bore his name, cameras flashing as security escorted him like a common criminal. His empire crumbled faster than anyone could have imagined. Banks froze his accounts. Lawsuits piled up. Journalists dug deeper. unearthing skeletons he thought were buried forever. Every betrayal, every shady deal, every mistress, it all spilled into the light. But perhaps the cruelest blow came from within. Elise, the heiress he had courted so publicly, severed ties immediately, her family denouncing him in a statement to the press. "We were deceived," it read. "We will not associate with fraud." And Selena, once his glittering companion, refused to return his calls. When he finally confronted her outside her apartment, disheveled and desperate, she didn't even let him inside. She stepped onto the porch, her voice icy. "You told me I was temporary. You told Elise the same. But the truth is, Adrian, you're the disposable one. No one needs you anymore." He begged then, his arrogance shattered, his tone pathetic. "Selena, you don't understand. I can fix this. I just need time." She laughed, the sound sharp as glass. "Time? You're out of it. Look around you, Adrian. You've lost everything, and I'm not going down with you." With that, she shut the door, leaving him alone in the dark. The once mighty CEO drifted from luxury hotels to cheap rentals, his tailored suits pawned, his name whispered with contempt. Former allies crossed the street to avoid him. Journalists hunted him like prey. Even his parents, embarrassed and weary, refused his calls. And Emily? She flourished. The same papers that mocked her weeks earlier now hailed her as the woman who stood tall against betrayal. She became a symbol of resilience, a voice for women who had been silenced. Adrian watched it all unfold from the shadows, rage festering inside him. But no matter how loud he shouted, no one listened anymore. The world had turned its back. One night, sitting in a dingy apartment with peeling wallpaper and unpaid bills stacked high, Adrian stared at his reflection in a cracked mirror. The man looking back at him was unrecognizable, hollow-eyed, unshaven, stripped of everything. He slammed his fist against the glass, but even the shards mocked him. This was his legacy now. Not power, not wealth, but ruin. The king of glass towers had fallen, and all that remained was dust. The storm had passed. For months, Emily lived as though she were walking through fire, enduring humiliation, betrayal, and despair. But now, the flames had burned away everything false. What remained was a new life, fragile but full of hope. Adrian Carter was gone from her world, his empire dismantled, his name a cautionary tale whispered with disgust. The man who once strutted across gala stages now hid from cameras in the shadows of cheap apartments. Emily no longer wasted tears on him. Justice had been served, and his ruin was the proof. But her victory was not measured in his downfall. It was in her survival, in the strength she had reclaimed. A few weeks after the gala, Emily went into labor. David rushed her to the hospital, never leaving her side. The hours were long, grueling, but when her baby boy entered the world with a strong cry, Emily felt a wave of emotion crash over her. She held him against her chest, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "You're safe now. You'll never know the pain your father caused. You'll only know love." The hospital room was quiet, filled with the soft hum of machines and the heartbeat of new life. For the first time in months, Emily felt peace. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. She was a mother, and that was her greatest strength. Word of her story spread beyond the scandal. Journalists wrote not only of Adrian's fall, but of Emily's resilience. Women reached out, strangers who had endured betrayal, abuse, humiliation. They called her an inspiration, a reminder that silence could be powerful, that dignity could be reclaimed. Emily didn't seek the spotlight, but she didn't shy from it either. She accepted interviews carefully, her words steady and compassionate. "This isn't just my story," she told one reporter. "It's the story of every woman who has been underestimated, who has been told she is weak. We are not weak. We are stronger than anyone realizes." David remained a steady presence, his quiet support never wavering. He never pushed for more, but Emily saw the admiration in his eyes, the respect. For now, her heart belonged only to her son, but she knew life had given her a rare gift, an ally who had walked through the fire beside her. Selena, too, disappeared from the limelight. She sent one final message: "Thank you for showing me the truth. I won't waste this second chance." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was closure. One afternoon, weeks later, Emily returned to the nursery. She rocked her son gently, watching the painted stars glow on the ceiling. She smiled, remembering the vow she had made during her darkest night. "I kept my promise, little one. He didn't win. We did." The baby cooed softly, his tiny fingers wrapping around hers. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of healing wash over her. The pain had not disappeared, but it no longer defined her. She had transformed it into strength, into purpose. The skyline outside the window glittered, the same towers Adrian once believed he owned. But Emily no longer felt overshadowed by them. She had built something greater, an unshakable life for her and her child. The world had watched her break. Now it would watch her rise. And as she kissed her son's forehead, Emily whispered the final words of her story. We are free. So that's how the story ends, my wonderful friends. You're still here with me, aren't you? If you've made it all the way to this moment, then something in this story must have touched your heart in a very real way. And maybe that's the point. Because life, like Emily's journey, often throws betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation at us. But as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters. Emily's strength came not from avoiding pain, but from facing it, transforming it, and refusing to let it define her. And isn't that the lesson for all of us? We can't always control what others do to us, but we can control how we rise from it. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So if this story resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, like it, and subscribe to our channel. Let's remind more people that even in the darkest nights, healing and dignity are possible, and together, we rise stronger.